The Virginia trial of Brendan Banfield, a former IRS special agent, centers on an alleged murder plot that can only be described as calculated and twisted. Banfield is charged with aggravated murder in the February 2023 killings of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Joseph Ryan inside their Herndon, Virginia home. Prosecutors allege Banfield orchestrated the killings to conceal an affair with the family's Brazilian au pair, Juliana Magalhães. They say Banfield impersonated his wife on a fetish website, luring Ryan to the home under the guise of a sexual encounter. According to Magalhães' testimony, Banfield shot Ryan and stabbed Christine while staging the scene as a home invasion. Banfield is facing life behind bars and has pleaded not guilty, and all the evidence is in. All the arguments have been made, and it's time to hear from the jury. Tonight, we are live from Virginia with all the latest in the au pair affair murder trial. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And you can tell, no red tie. It's black on this Friday. The jury deliberated, but they did not reach a verdict in the au pair affair murder trial. But there are things that they have to figure out. And there's really two different ways to look at most of the issues and the people involved in what happened. There were 4 people inside that bedroom. 2 of them are dead. 2 of them were arrested. But the 2 who were arrested both testified telling different stories. So there are some things that the jury has to figure out about the 4 people in the center of this case who were in that bedroom. We begin with Joseph Ryan. Is he a victim or is he a rapist? Right? Is he a victim? Is he a man who thought he was pleasing a woman and acting out a mutual, consensual, sexual fantasy that morning inside the bedroom? And then was actually, that's what he thought, but he was set up to be there to be murdered. So is he a victim or is he a rapist? Someone who goes on a FetLife site and says one thing, but really intends to do something else. Sets up a rape fantasy that he turns into a real rape and ultimately a murder. So the jury's got to figure out, who is Joe Ryan, victim or rapist? Next, Christine Banfield. Is she a faithful wife or a kinky cheater? Is she a wife who's working 12.5 hours a day in her shift as a nurse, helping sexual assault victims? Is she someone who, when she's not working 12.5 hours a day, is home taking care of their 4-year-old daughter? Someone who is faithful to her husband despite his wandering eye? Someone who is innocently sending him a picture of a new bathing suit, hoping that he likes it? Or is she a kinky cheater? A woman who was into some wild stuff, whose husband was too vanilla to engage in it, so she had to travel outside the relationship to get what she really wanted, which was to be tied up, threatened with a knife, wrapped in saran wrap for 3.5 hours. Is that who she is? The jury's got to figure that out. It's one or the other. It's not both. What about Juliana Magalhães, the au pair? Is she an honest killer or a pawn? When I say honest killer, it's someone who, you know what? She was a part of this conspiracy, and she got up on the witness stand and told the truth about what she did and told the truth about what Brendan Banfield did. She's a killer, but at least telling the truth about it inside of a courtroom. Or is she a pawn? Was she used by prosecutors in a case where the only crime committed was committed by Joe Ryan? That would be the only crime that was committed that day, according to the defense. And she's used as a pawn to tell the jury exactly what prosecutors want, because prosecutors want a conviction, despite the fact that the defense says the only crime committed that morning was by Joe Ryan. So is she just a pawn of the prosecution who wants to get sent back to Brazil? who was afraid to face a trial even though she is actually innocent? Or is she an honest killer who told the jury what really happened? And finally, Brendan Banfield, the defendant. Heroic cheater or murderer? Right? He admitted all these affairs and admitted, of course, the affair with the au pair. But he was heroic that day. He went into that room, face down, this madman, Joe Ryan, shot him trying desperately to save his wife. Did everything he could to save his wife, despite the fact that he cheats on her left and right and sleeps with the au pair in the marital bedroom where all this is taking place. Despite all that cheating, he's still the hero. And that's why Christine apologized to him as she was dying. Or is he a murderer? Someone who came up with this twisted, diabolical plot that killed two people. One of the people killed was also framed for murder, all so he could sleep with a 20-something-year-old au pair to replace his wife, because she was already taking care of their child. Is that who he is? Jury's got to decide. They didn't decide today, but let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's joining us live from Fairfax County, Virginia. All right, Kelly, great to see you. I'll be honest, I have this theorem on how long deliberations take. It's about an hour for every day of testimony. So in this one, I think we're looking at like 9 hours would be about average deliberation time. So it would have been super fast if it happened today. It didn't happen. But what is the latest that you can tell us tonight?
Hi there, Vinny. No, it did not happen. So today, jurors deliberated for about 3 hours. They had that hard out at 4:30 today to get out of here. One of the jurors had a prior commitment. We'll come back on Monday morning starting at 10 a.m. For the closing arguments today, Vinny, the courtroom was just packed. More people inside that courtroom than I have seen so far throughout this entire case. From the jurors' perspective, I was watching them as the closing arguments were being delivered. You have 4 people that are in the back row. One of the gals looks about the same age as Juliana. She is on the jury because 4 have been released so far. So 4 are alternates. So the 4 people, they were all men. They are the alternates in this case. So this young woman in particular is on the jury. Same age around as Juliana. She just was sitting there listening to defense counsel and had her hand like resting, her chin on her hand, watching the whole time for defense counsel's closing argument. And then there were 3 other gentlemen next to her, same exact demeanor. So that was an interesting takeaway. 2 gentlemen in the front row, they have had their hands, their arms crossed in front of them pretty much this entire trial. Same demeanor from them as well. But really interesting closing arguments. The prosecutor, she's always quick and concise, really going down the elements as to what you have to prove. I know we have a screenshot of what the charges are in this case. We have 2 counts of aggravated murder, and then we also have the other 2 counts as well that they're going to be deliberating. But of course, we can only imagine that they're taking the most time on those aggravated murder charges, Vinny. So interesting day, big day, packed courtroom. It was great to be inside listening to this all today.
All right, well, let's talk about what you were listening to. Tell us about those closing arguments.
Okay, so the prosecutor really just laid out how although the case is not perfect in regard to specifically the digital forensics, she said the evidence, especially that blood evidence, still points to Brendan Banfield, the defendant in this case. She said when you take a look at it and when you listen to Juliana's testimony, she was saying, well, why would Juliana lie? Would she lie just for the $10,000 contract that she could get from Netflix or Hulu? So she was really questioning that. She really said that there's one person that's lying here, and that's Brendan Banfield, because he wanted to get rid of his wife. Let's go ahead and listen to a bit of what she had to say.
We know that on February 24th, 2023, he executed his plan to murder his wife and an innocent stranger. He was in love with Juliana. He can pretend that this was a fling, an affair, he'd had them before, no big deal. He was in love with Juliana. He was afraid of losing her. He needed to get rid of his wife so that they could be together, so that they could marry, so that they could have those babies that he was picking out names for.
Defense counsel said that Juliana's testimony was bought and paid for. Let's listen to a bit more of his closing.
Juliana made it up. She told the Commonwealth what they wanted to hear, and without question, they just took it as their story. She told this lie to secure herself a deal that benefited her. This one event relating to digital forensics is reasonable doubt.
Defense counsel Vinny saying that catfishing never took place. He also told the jurors today, is it reasonable to think that a man who has had multiple affairs, he came up here, he told you about his affairs. The defense counsel said that's horrible. He had to sit up here and tell you all about it. But is it reasonable to think that a 6 to 8 week affair with this particular woman would have made him want to kill his wife, his life partner of 19 years? He said that's not even reasonable to think that way. Well, the prosecutor had a rebuttal to this. Why don't we go ahead and listen to what she had to say, in which she is just trying to point out more of what she says are Brendan Banfield's lies.
The defendant took the stand and he lied. And he lied about collateral matters. He told you that he had a big career-defining work meeting the morning of the murder. And then you heard from his boss, who said, no, he didn't. He lied. He said that he and Juliana did not have a plan to kill Christine at the time that they went to the shooting range. Well, he said not at that time. If he's lying about the things that don't matter, how can you believe a single word he said?
So the prosecutor calling Brendan Banfield a liar, defense counsel pointing out that there were many flaws in this investigation, how the detectives, some of them were transferred out of the unit, Vinny, and just talking about all we're trying to do here is get to the truth.
Unbelievable day. All right, let's talk about the au pair, Juliana Magalhaes, right? A big, huge part of this trial. And we hear about this deal and everything.
Yeah.
Where is she now, and when does she go back to Brazil?
Yeah, Vinny, this sweetheart deal that everyone is talking about, she pled guilty to lesser charges. So we did hear today that a sentencing date has been scheduled. Before, we did not have a sentencing date scheduled, but now we have a sentencing date scheduled. That's going to be February 13th as part of the plea agreement with the prosecutor's office in exchange for her testimony. After the completion of this trial, she would be sent back to Brazil. That is the agreement she has with the prosecutor's office. Of course, this agreement then has to be approved by the judge. So on February 13th, we'll find out more about that. But after the proceedings today, the judge did address Juliana, just talking about her in particular. Juliana wasn't there, but she has been held while this trial has been taking place here close by in case anybody needed her for any particular thing. And so that was addressed today, and she's going to be going back, I believe it's to the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center.
All right, February 13th, big day. Does she still get sentenced if it's a hung jury? Do we know if they have to retry this?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. She'd probably continue to be held, Vinny, until the outcome. I mean, I wonder if that's there's probably nothing in the plea agreement that addresses that.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right,
Good
so
question.
We got a big weekend. Everyone's going to be bundled up inside. Almost the entire country is going to be super, super cold. It's cold where you are. Let's talk about Monday. What can we expect?
Monday, 10 a.m. So the judge gave them a lot of latitude, asking them what time do they want to come back. They can make their own decision, Vinny. So she said either 9 or 10 a.m. Eastern. They decided they're going to come back at 10 a.m. So we'll have to see on Monday if we end up getting a verdict. She told them you can take as many breaks as you want. You can take an hour for lunch. You can take a half hour for lunch. But the main rule is you all have to be together and deliberate. No, not one person can be gone and you're talking about the case. So those are the normal rules. But back here, 10 a.m. Monday.
All right, 10 a.m. Monday. If they agree, maybe 4 o'clock on Monday. we'll all be watching our televisions. Kelly Craft, stay warm this weekend. Thank you so much. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining me tonight, criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud. Also with us, former law enforcement officer, host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King. And finally, entertainment host Holland Reed. Good evening, everyone. Wow. So what do we think, Josh? What are your thoughts here on this Friday night? The jury's got the weekend to think about this. They've got to make some real decisions about the 4 people who were inside that room, who they are, and what they were doing and what their role was.
Exactly, Vinny. And I'll have to tell you, I try to be as fair as I can to the attorneys because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones battling it out. But I have to tell you, the defense really whiffed on a couple of things here. Number one, during the prosecution's closing argument, their first close, the prosecutor's linchpin for why Mr. Banfield was the murderer, so to speak, was because, as this is what they said, that he was more likely to have created the fetish account than anybody else. Well, the defense should have jumped on that because more likely is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not. And he really should have shoved that down the prosecution's throat as not meeting their burden of proof, right? And another thing that I noticed was that the defense, they didn't have very much conviction in what they were saying. It was almost a snooze fest as to what going through all the evidence and reading the lines from a piece of paper. It was honestly, it was boring. It was hard to pay attention. And when your client is on trial for murder, you have to believe in what you're saying. And the prosecution gave him so many opportunities to really knock it out of the fence. And one more thing, Vinny, is the prosecution challenged the defense. It said the defendant, when he was on the witness stand, never addressed X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, you need to address that. You can't just leave it there, which is what the defense did. They never addressed why the defendant was never at the house when the victim was going through, contacting the fetish website, and why the child was also in the house during a certain period of time. Like, that wasn't addressed, and it should have been.
Yeah. Okay. Claudia King, what are your thoughts here? Do you think Christine Banfield is a faithful wife or a kinky cheater?
I absolutely think that she is a faithful wife. And I think that, Brendan Banfield, to get on the stand and say what he said about her is just absolutely unconscionable. One of the things that I would love to see, Vinny, is these FetLife and Telegram conversations, because I would love to see if there was discussion of a safe word, if there were discussions of, how this was going to play out and how to do it, correctly and safely for both parties. And I don't think that we would see those things because I think that Brendan and Juliana created all of this to ensure that this poor other victim, Mr. Ryan, would come in, would not stop the attack, and they would be able to swoop in and pretend to be the saviors. Yeah. I mean, the defense did the best they could with what they had, but it's a stinker for them, 100%.
Yeah, well, in those conversations, in those messages that the jury heard, one thing that really struck me was Joe Ryan telling who he thought was Christine, Anastasia, listen, in this fantasy, if you are, resisting too much, I am just going to stop. And then they respond, no, keep going, keep going. So there is some of that for the jury to talk about. Excuse me. Holland Reed, I want to show you a picture here.
Absolutely.
This is the kitchen, right? The bedroom is upstairs. In that drawer downstairs is where Christine's phone was, in a drawer, locked. What are the odds that she took her phone, turned it off, went downstairs, put it in the drawer, and left it there?
I'm going to say the odds are slim to none. Josh and Claudia and I discuss this on a regular basis. I have personally been the victim of someone that had access to my phone on a regular basis. There's no chance in Hades, I'm going to say that because classy, but it's not going to happen. This is the definition of trying to storytell. And unfortunately, he is a terrible storyteller. And the story that is aligning with what the evidence is showing is not making any sense whatsoever. You're saying the au pair made it up. That's nonsense. It's nonsensical. What's happening is he tried to, on the front end, create a narrative. Now on the back end is trying to sum up the narrative of the storytelling. He should go to writing class at this point. When he goes to prison, he should probably take a storytelling class, because this is the worst case scenario of how to do beginning, middle, and end when it comes to the evidence matching.
I thought it was a very dramatic scene in the bedroom as Christine is apologizing to him and saying, "I love you."
Nobody would say that, Vinny. Never in a million years on your deathbed, never in a million years on your deathbed are you apologizing for an affair that you're having. BS, 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 BS. We know this.
All right, Josh, stay awake, because when we're coming back, the defense closing argument, we're going to play it for folks. Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinny Politan Investigates, we take a look at all the facts and all the evidence leading up to the killings of Christine Banfield and Joe Ryan. Did prosecutors prove their case? Tonight, we investigate.
What are you reporting?
Fire. The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
The defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home.
Their sprawling mansion set on fire.
Paul and Keith were not only brothers, but business partners.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
They're coming to her and asking her if she'll testify against my client, because that's what they wanted from the beginning. She was a pawn in trying to get to my client.
It seems the apparent strength of the defense is to go after the au pair, but the au pair, is part of all of this because he was sleeping with her. He was the one who was sleeping with her. That's why she's part of this whole case. All right, so let's take a listen to more of the defense closing argument today and see what they have to say and how they can explain or try to raise that reasonable doubt.
You'll see this timeline in these letters. It goes toward July. July was the date of her first trial. And you'll see, and I'm not suggesting what she's saying about her lawyer is correct, but it was obviously something that was on her mind, and she didn't feel like she had the support. At that point, if you think about it, the only support that she was having was from Brendan. Brendan was not arrested. Brendan was there communicating with her. Brendan's mom was actually supporting her lifestyle in the jail in terms of commissary, things like that, and also supporting her by having paid for a lawyer. Around August, you'll see in these letters, it gets to be real despair. And then you can almost see hope just drop right away from her when she hears that Brendan's arrested. And then she testified. She went into the hospital from October 13th to October 23rd. And as soon as she's released and back to the jail, the deal is done. She's told, if you testify against him, we'll recommend time served disposition. She can go back to Brazil, be with her mom, create her new life. And we know a little bit about the new life that she's planning on creating. And you have it in the documents that are before you. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Netflix. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Hulu. She's been talking to every other news media at first to try to see if they just put $50 into her commissary. But then she realized, hey, there may be something here. She's invented, she's going to try to write letters. She's going to try to write a book. She wants to have a documentary. She wants to have a series. And she's about to sign or about to agree when her lawyer steps in and says, don't sign that. And so around March of 2025, you see negotiations essentially end. The number was in the area of $25,000, and it was going to be sent to her mother in Brazil. It's a lot of money in Brazil. And so, where's the downside for her? Her entire story has been bought and paid for. First, with her freedom, and then now a little bit on the back end.
All right, even if it's bought and paid for, does that make it not true? I guess is really the question. So even if she is negotiating with Netflix, by the way, whoever she's negotiating with probably could have got much more money, at least 4 times as much, but that's another story for another time. So I'll start with you, Claudia. What are your thoughts here? Obviously, she's got unclean hands, and we know that. Like, she was with Brendan in the bedroom, the master bedroom. So, like, she's dirty to begin with in what she's engaging in with Brendan. She's admitted being a killer. What are your thoughts here, though? Is she a truthful killer?
I think she is a truthful killer, and I kind of had to chuckle at the defense saying, where's the downside? I mean, the downside is she's now an admitted killer. That's kind of a downside, and she's leaving the United States. So I don't think that she comes out of this all rosy and happy and, you know, looking amazing and making tons of money down the road. But I think she is telling the truth at this point. Yes, she is a murderer, just like Brendan, but I think she finally stepped forward and told the truth. And the prosecution didn't just take what she said. What she said had to line up with the evidence that they had. So it's not like she just made up this random story and they said, oh, okay, I guess that sounds good. Let's just go with that. It fit with what the evidence said and what evidence they had, and that's why they took her story to be truthful, not just because they wanted to wrap this up with a bow.
Go ahead, Holland.
I'm sorry. I was like chomping at the bit. Okay, so the thing is that deals do not guarantee truth or lies. They are a part of the process. I'm like, this woman is gone gangster in this scenario, and if the defense is saying that she made it up, then okay, that's one side of the coin, but that's not what they're saying. Is she's admitting all of this? She's admitting the participatory acts of being a part of the evidentiary support. Everything she's saying is lining up with what the evidence is supporting. So when she is speaking her truth, no matter how crazy it sounds, or I would say, I'm sorry, the word's losing me right now. She's staking her claim in this entire thing and making sure that she's gonna win in the end. And I'm not saying she's wrong, but the evidence is supporting everything she's saying. She put her stake in the sand and she's like, hey, let's go for it. I'm gonna get this money. I'm gonna actually tell the truth and I'm gonna come out on top regardless. That's gangster. And unfortunately, it's not gonna bode well for Mr. Banfield.
You know, I love my colleagues to death, but sometimes we have some major disagreements. Both Holland and Claudia say that the au pair's testimony aligns with the evidence. Well, which story aligns with the evidence? Because the first story that she had for 3 months didn't, right? And after she received all the police reports and the evidence, she then comes out with a story that, guess what, aligns with the evidence. So I think you have to look at the timing of when her story came out before you make those connections. Also, the defense is saying that she's a pawn of the prosecution. Well, yeah, she could be, but two things can be true at once. She can be a pawn of the prosecution and also telling the truth. We already know she's a pawn because if you believe the prosecution, you have to believe that Mr. Banfield was using her and that she was Mr. Banfield's pawn. So she's just somebody else's pawn now. So what do you have to look at? Corroborating evidence. What is the corroborating evidence that says that she's right?
Point. The whole point is a controlled narrative. The whole point is the controlled narrative. Everyone is all of this is a controlled narrative. Prosecution, defense, and yeah, this is the worst storytelling that I've witnessed. The worst storytelling that I've witnessed on both sides because it goes both ways. You can literally go like this. Vinny, you said it very much in your opening statements of what you were saying is that it had to do with what side of the story makes sense. And that's what we're dealing with.
All right, when we come back, we'll take a listen to Brendan Banfield's The Best of Brendan Banfield next.
Hi, sir. My name is Gina. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died. I'm so sorry.
It's one of those moments that I'm sure the jury is thinking about as they decide and they judge Brendan Banfield. Is he telling the truth? Is he lying? Is he a killer or is he some sort of a hero? All right, what I want to play for you are some of the most important pieces of Brendan Banfield's testimony, because when a defendant testifies, it changes the nature of a trial. It really becomes about him. They can judge his words, his story directly, in addition to all the other evidence, but really focus in. Like, is he trying to pull one over on us, or is he telling us the truth? Let's watch.
I heard the sounds of, I would say, moaning, as well as sound of skin-on-skin contact.
And what did you think was going on at that point?
Sex. Pushing the door open with my right foot revealed Christine and who I now know is Joseph Ryan. They were on the floor near the bottom left of my bed.
You saw a knife there. What were you thinking in terms of Joe Ryan with a knife to Christine's neck?
I was extremely terrified. He told me that she was hers, that she was hers, and that she gave herself to me. And Christine kind of yelled, moaned. It appeared that he did a very forceful stab towards Christine, and Christine kind of spun away from him. So this kind of had Joe now like on his knees, kind of facing Christine, of which I saw him do a downward stabbing stroke, and that's when I fired at him. Christine told me that she was bleeding out, and that she was sorry and that she loved me.
You've had multiple affairs, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and one of those affairs was with a woman named Danielle, who you met on a fetish site searching for sugar babies. Is that correct?
I would not call it a fetish site.
You see Joe Ryan behind your naked wife with something metal in his hand. Is that accurate?
Yes.
You did not yell for Juliana, who's behind you, to call 911?
I didn't know that Juliana was behind me or had climbed the stairs at that point. I had only seen her on the main floor leaving.
Okay, but you told us that the foyer is this big echoey chamber that you can hear from anywhere in the house. If she's in the foyer and you're standing at the door, whether or not she's immediately behind you, if you yelled, call 911, she would hear you, wouldn't she? In this echoey foyer.
Yes, she would hear that.
Okay, and when first responders arrived, you agree you're on video holding her neck with your bare hand, correct?
I think so.
So where had the towel, the blanket, the sheet gone at that point after you were instructed by 911?
I think the towel was right next to me, but...
It was under your knees, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought it was right next to me.
Thank you. Nothing further, Judge.
All right, so give me your thoughts about Brendan Banfield, his story, his testimony, whatever. We'll begin with Holland Reed. Take it over.
I'm going to say this. Okay, Brendan, you got to go to writing school and start there, because first and foremost, if you think you're this FBI agent, husband, hero, superhero, what have you, the first thing you're going to do if you see a knife on your wife's throat, I don't care what scenario it is, you're running into action and you're protecting your wife. And no one, not a victim or whoever, is going to stand by and then listen to a commentary that he's creating out of thin air, explaining that somehow she's apologizing to him for her nefarious acts or what have you. And then in addition to that, this guy is threatening your wife's life, and you wait until after she apologizes or what have you to then kill him and shoot him. So get your storytelling right. This is absolute nonsense. Also, I will say this. If he is supposed to be this hero, this superhero that he wants to paint himself as, then if he heard all those noises, exactly what the prosecutor was saying, then he kicking down doors would have been the first thing. I'm not going to talk about personal experiences of people that when you feel like it's flight or fight, you go and run into the fire if you're claiming to be this FBI or whatever federal agent that whatever he says he was, right? So all of this does not add up to the evidence. Yeah. Being a fake superhero is absolutely nonsensical, and it's what he's doing to try to create a narrative, to change. He started to try to paint a picture. He couldn't follow up with painting the picture, and now the story is unraveling, and that's what we're dealing with right now, and he's guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, there's a reason why, Vinny, last week that all three of us predicted that he really was not going to take the witness stand. And it's exactly for what Holland just said. Because once you take the witness stand, especially in a case like this, where the prosecution does have holes in their evidence, it changes the jury's viewpoint to looking at the evidence, to really breaking down the demeanor and the defendant's story. And the prosecution did a great job in their cross-examination, pointing out why it just didn't make sense. And also, you allow yourself to be cross-examined to your own sexual history, and that stuff never would have come in except for on impeachment stuff. I know Claudia had a lot of things to say about this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Josh. I completely agree with you, because we got to hear that Brendan himself has had a profile on a website before, specifically for dating sugar babies. So now we know that he's one that was able to set this up and knew about these websites to seek out certain sexual partners. And I was just so unimpressed with his testimony. He completely should have listened to us. He should not have testified. I think he did a terrible job and did not do himself any favors at all.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm not going to be surprised if the jury comes back early Monday morning with a verdict. You know, it's not unheard of for them not to have a verdict on a, late on a Friday afternoon. But they're going to have some time to think about it this weekend. And, boy, I don't think that it's going to take very long.
At all. Not long at all. This is common sense at this point. The evidence is there and the motive is there. kink does not equal, a criminal defense, but he's already put it out there that he is a part of the kink. And so now this is all about criminal, and the evidence supports the criminal.
And one thing
Absolutely.
that really,
I think you're going to get to wear your red tie on Monday.
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys remember in closing arguments how the prosecution pointed out that the wife had never signed up for any type of dating website or kink website or fetish website prior to the FetLife stuff? I think that's really important, because you would expect that for somebody to be involved in the FetLife, that they would have some type of track record with that type of kink. But there really wasn't, but the husband did. Not only did the husband do this, but it was brought up during cross-examination, and that never would have brought out, except for the fact that he took the stand. That's why he should never take the witness stand.
Well, not so loud, Josh. We want defendants to take the witness stand. Number one, to let the jury get to the truth. And number two, to let the viewers at home have a better idea of what this person is all about. And I get there's a difference, right? The difference is from the defense, you're trying to hold the prosecution to their proofs. But for us, we want the truth to come out, and I want more evidence, not less. So I like when the defendant testifies. I think it gives the jury a much better opportunity to really take a look at everything, the big picture. We are out of time. Big thanks, Josh Colesrud, Claudia King, Holland Reed. Stay warm this weekend in all your different areas. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Brendan Banfield and the au pair, Juliana Magalise. We take a look at this intense relationship, from hot tubs to bathtubs to the witness stand. Why did the au pair change her story? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV. Next week,
covering the country's biggest trials before we bring you inside the courtroom. Plus, the most compelling true crime cases in our daily spotlight.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. Death penalty off the table for Luigi Mangione, accused cold-blooded stalking murderer. This is in the federal case. The judge found they did not meet the requirements for the death penalty, so that is gone. The district court judge, Margaret Garnett, dismissed 2 of the 4 counts. Murder through use of a firearm. What? She got rid of the murder through use of a firearm. Meanwhile, a loss for Mangione. The backpack recovered from him with all that evidence in it will be able to be used against him. But that's a big win, getting those 2 dismissals. We'll see if the government does anything to appeal that. But he still has the state case also where he's facing murder charges. Okay, please take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. Take a look. We have Kari. There's Kari. This is Kari Troutman, missing since January 28th out of Levine, Arizona, just 17 years old. So if you see Kari, please pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference, 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Phoenix Police Department in Arizona. Let's see if we can get Kari to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.